makers, and welcome to a plumbing skills video. It's a little chilly out here in the shop, probably in the range of like 20-ish degrees. I got a little space heater going, so hopefully that keeps my hands from freezing up. But bear with me. We are talking about plumbing pipes and how to join them. Specifically, how to join different types of pipes together. Going through a real quick history, after lead pipes and wiped fittings and stuff like that, we got into galvanized. This is a threaded steel pipe that's been galvanized for a little bit of corrosion protection and rust proof. This was very popular for a long time. Then we started getting into copper pipe. Copper, well, let me say tubing. Tubing is the correct term. Copper tubing is a little bit nicer than galvanized in my opinion. It doesn't rust, but it will corrode in some environments. It's also prone to fluctuations in price. So sometimes it's affordable and other times it's not affordable. So that's copper tubing. Probably about the early 2000s, PEX or PEX-like pipes became popular. It's basically just a flexible, semi-flexible, kind of stiff plastic tubing. It can come in different colors denoting cold water, hot water, who knows what water. And they also have kind of a translucent color. This is kind of the go-to nowadays for residential, light commercial construction. We have the old standby of PVC pipe, just Schedule 40 chlorinate or polyvinyl chlorinate pipe, PVC. So this can be used outside of a house, going up to a house as a water supply from, say, the water meter to the foundation of the house, but it can't be technically used inside of a house, especially not with hot water because it can leach certain chemicals out of it. That is not to say that you will not find it in buildings, especially, you know, say a farmhouse or somebody out in the country, or, you know, somebody that's worked on their own house and done the best they can. Sometimes you find stuff like that in a house. End of the world, probably not, but you'll run into it. What you can use inside of a house is this Cpvc, or chlorinated polyvinyl chlorinate. It's a lot like PVC, but it actually is chlorinated so it can withstand hot water. So this can be used inside of a house. This you would see a lot more in, say, mobile homes, things like that, where cost and weight are an issue. So it's an easy to work with type of pipe to install, but you'll run into this every now and again. And again, I don't have an exact piece of polyethylene tubing, but basically it's a black plastic pipe. It's pretty flexible. A lot of times you'll find this from a well to a house run underground in long distances, because you can get these in huge rolls of 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 feet, depending on what size you need. So if you are remodeling, renovating, adding on, repairing, something to do with plumbing in your house, you could run into any one of these types of pipes. And you may run into a situation where you want to convert from one type of pipe to any of the others. So we are going to talk about how to do that. If you have an older house, chances are you'll run into galvanized pipe. Galvanized pipe is a cut and thread and then connect fittings together style of system. If you get a leak or you want to add on to the system, you need to cut the pipe, unthread it to the nearest fitting or pipe, and then add on to it. So say we want to add on copper to, you know, create an addition or a new bathroom or something like that. I could take a new piece of copper tubing. I could take a 1/2-inch female adapter. I could solder that on, and then I could just thread these two things together and voila, I've made a connection. Problem with that is that galvanized metal and copper are dissimilar metals, and it will cause an electrical reaction called electrolysis. That will cause the copper pipe to start corroding, and pretty soon, sooner than the lifespan of the rest of the system, it will corrode through and most likely have leaks at the fitting. Now, you might run into an old building where it's been done that way, and it isn't corroding and it isn't leaking too bad, or at all. Teflon paste and Teflon tape do provide a very limited amount of electrolysis protection inside the fitting, but that's not the way to go. To actually create a good connection between galvanized and copper, you have a few choices. This is what's called a dielectric nipple. And on the inside, you'll notice that it's lined with white plastic and it actually goes over both ends. This is 3/4 inch, so I can't actually thread it on here, but this is zinc plated. So zinc is a sacrificial type element. You'll have zinc anode rods, zinc blocks, things like that will keep electrolysis from occurring in dissimilar metals. So you could, you know, put some couplings on and put this in between. So this is a dielectric nipple. They also have dielectric couplings, which have a threaded internal area, which is insulated also. So that's one option. It's probably the least expensive option for connecting galvanized to copper. Another simple step up would be to take brass pipe, and code states you need a 6-inch nipple and a 6-inch length of brass threaded in between your copper and your galvanized will provide you that dielectric break. So 6 inches of brass, you're good. That can be, again, rather expensive depending on the current cost of, say, brass, which it can get pretty expensive. If you've got a 1-inch fitting or something like that, or a 1-inch nipple that you need, that could get really expensive. All these fittings that I'm showing are all 1/2 inch to the best of my ability. So then probably similar to brass, but more of a uniform price, would be a Dielectric Union. This is really nice in a galvanized system in that you can actually break it and take this adapter here, which is just metal. Again, it's got zinc plating on it. And if I can thread it on, you thread it onto your galvanized pipe. You pull this little assembly apart. You've got an insulated bushing on the inside of this nut, which isn't wanting to come out, that kind of orange bushing there. Slide that over your pipe. You take your brass adapter here and you solder that on to the end of your copper tubing with this nut far enough back. Once this is cool, you slide your nut back over that brass fitting, and then you take your rubber neoprene washer, put it on there, and then thread your system together. So that's a dielectric union. Now this is a female dielectric union, but they do also have male dielectric unions where this would be a threaded portion sticking out, and then you can go directly into a galvanized fitting. So those would be how you would adapt to copper to galvanized. To adapt galvanized to pretty much any other system out there besides copper, we would just basically get a male or female 1/2 inch or 1 inch or 3/4, whatever size you're dealing with, adapter and adapt onto the galvanized pipe. So for copper tubing, it's again pretty simple. As long as we're not going to galvanized, we can get a 3/4 or 1/2 inch male adapter and solder that on and thread it in, and we can go into pretty much any type of threaded fitting female adapter, or we could get a female adapter and also solder that on. The trick with this is solder your fittings first before you attach them to a plastic piping system. I also like these drop ears when I am trying to attach to something, because I can secure this copper tubing to a piece of blocking or stud or something like that and securely thread in the adapter to the different type of pipe. So that is one way of going about it. Every now and again, you might find a fitting like this, which is basically a piece of copper tubing and it goes into this nut fitting. This is a flared connection, and so basically you have a beveled face on this fitting. It's got male iron pipe on this side, and then you actually have to flare out the tubing here. This isn't very common, but every now and again you might find somebody that was into refrigeration or something like that, and they might have a flared fitting for some strange reason. So same thing, you've got male iron pipe, you can go into pretty much any style adapter, and you can solder on the other end if you need to. I have run into a few situations in the past where somebody was using refrigeration diameter tubing and fittings. And when you get like a 7/16 or 9/16 or whatever it was, your 1/2 inch fittings don't work, your 3/4 inch fittings don't work, 3/8 inch fittings don't work. It becomes a real hassle. The other area where you'll commonly find flared tubing like this would be in 3/8 and 1/4 inch supply lines to toilets and sinks, and then also to ice makers and water dispensers and things like that, coffee makers, where you would have a 3/8 or 1/4 inch copper tubing with a little flared connection on the end. As far as Schedule 40 PVC, like I said, it's not supposed to be used inside of a house, but every now and again you will find it inside of a house. Like I said, if you can get to 1/2 inch or just the tapered NPT National Pipe Taper fittings, whether it's a male or a female, you're good to adapt into different types of fittings. Now, the male adapter is pretty good because it's going inside of typically a metal fitting, so you don't have to worry too much. A female adapter, on the other hand, when you try and screw a tapered fitting into this, it has a great potential to split on the side and break on you. So as far as pressure pipe systems, never, in my opinion, use a female fitting for PVC pipe. If you need to adapt and you want the best potential success for adapting into a threaded fitting, I would avoid the Schedule 40 or white PVC male adapter, and I would get myself probably a 6-inch Schedule 80, which is the gray PVC nipple. I would cut one end off, clean it up so that I could get a good fitting glued on, and then I would just put a coupling on or a bell fitting on the end of a long piece of pipe, and I would glue it together that way. This is a lot harder, a lot more durable of a fitting to screw into a metal fitting. So that would be how I would transition from PVC pipe into a metallic system, or pretty much any type of system where I'd be threading this in. Like I said, female adapters are a no-go, but I understand. There are times where there's just absolutely no other options. You're too far out. You don't have the ability to get the stuff you need. You could, this is a 3/4 inch coupling, and this is a 3/4 by 1/2 inch threaded by slip bushing. You could glue that in there and then thread a fitting in, and being that this is double thick, you're going to have a better potential of having success and not have that split on you. All right, since we talked about PVC, let's talk about Cpvc. This is a slightly smaller outside diameter, or OD, than 1/2 inch PVC, and because it is allowed to be used inside of a house, you're going to see a much more broad range of fittings that are designed for the interior of a house. Standard Schedule 40 PVC isn't going to have a drop ear 90 and things like that, or like a PEX adapter, as they aren't going to be as common. So one thing that you may note is all these fittings where they have threaded female adapters all have metal bushings, whether it's copper, a couple brass, or stainless steel. That is, again, because those female bushings or female sides of a threaded fitting will tend to split. So by casting in or adapting to a brass fitting, they avoid that problem. Now, yes, they do have just a standard female fitting that's glued on one side, and it does have a little O-ring washer in there. So again, you can get to your 1/2 inch or National Pipe Taper threaded fittings. So that's good, which means, again, you can probably adapt to any other fitting out there or style of pipe. You got standard couplings, nothing big special about that. This is basically a coupling with a PEX adapter, a stainless steel or chrome-plated brass PEX adapter on it. So I can take PEX and just go straight onto that, crimp it on. I'm good to go from Cpvc to PEX. Here's another one. This is a Union. Like I said, sometimes you're dealing with galvanized pipe or something like that, and you have to tie in. I could put this on the end of a piece of galvanized pipe, and because this is not copper, I don't have to worry really about any electrolysis. So this is a Union, and it is Cpvc, so it does have a little washer in there, that little black washer. and then it just threads together. So we glue it up, we attach it, and then thread it together, and we've got a union fitting. Here's another style of union. This is more of a kind of a conventional style that you might be used to. It's got the big outer diameter, and it'll also have a gasket in there. So we glue this onto our Cpvc, thread this side onto our steel pipe, galvanized pipe, pretty much any pipe we want. This drop ear, it's got 3 big old lugs on it, so you can secure it to a stud or a piece of blocking, and then you can more securely adapt from Cpvc, which honestly is kind of flimsy and will wiggle around a lot, to a different type of pipe. This is also really nice when you're running supply lines out through a wall to supply a sink or a toilet or something like that. Nobody wants a supply that's just flopping around all over the place. So attach this securely, put on a nipple through the wall, and then you can put your angle stop on the end of that, and it's nice and secure. And then this is a glue by a copper female adapter, so you could run your copper straight off of this and not worry about any type of dissimilar metals. Everybody loves PEX. It's kind of the popular material of choice. It's, again, they've got a lot of different fittings, a lot of different sizes. Here we've got 1/2-inch barbed adapters that just slide in the tubing, and we can transition to 1/2-inch male or 1/2-inch female iron pipe thread. Again, you know, I could just thread this on if I needed to galvanized, and stick my tubing on there, and then I can just crimp it and I'm good to go. Another option, because PEX is kind of wobbly, we've got this drop ear, which, you know, I could run the nipple through the wall for a supply line for a toilet or shower or whatever, and then just connect the PEX on there, and that gives me a nice secure fitting as it comes through the wall. I've got the ability to adapt easily to copper with both a male and a female fitting style of PEX adapter. So if I want to, I would just solder this onto the end of my copper tubing, and then I could just crimp directly onto there, and there I have my connection between copper and PEX. This is a female. It goes over the tubing, and this would be the male size, and this goes into a fitting like that. I've got kind of a selection of different styles of crimp rings. There are these style crimp rings here. One's all copper looking 1/2-inch. This one's kind of got a bronze or brushed bronze copper coating on it. So there's that style there. There is the stainless steel crimp ring, which you basically pinch it there and that crimps down. There is the, I think it's Pro Press basically. It looks like a piece of PEX tubing, but it's kind of a clear piece. And what happens is there's a hydraulic or a mechanical spreader that will stretch that out internally and make it loose over the PEX tubing. And when you have it expanded, you slide it over your PEX, you quick put it together, and then it will shrink down and lock onto the fitting. Now this is not the correct size tubing, and as you can see I can slide it on by hand. That's not how it works, but that kind of gives you an idea of the type of Pro Press tool. I believe it's Pro Press. Probably not. Somebody will correct me. Thank you if you do. That tool is very expensive, so your average person isn't going to have that unless they're a professional plumber. Because these crimp rings are really hard to keep in place, especially with a big pair of pliers like these, it's really hard to hold that in just the right spot on the tubing and actually get the crimpers to crimp. So what they've come up with is a little depth gauge and stop. So this little red plastic area, that slides over your tubing, you bottom it out, you put your fitting in, and then it's not going to go anywhere, and it's a whole lot easier to get your crimpers on that ring in the right spot and crimp it. Like I said, every now and again you'll run into polyethylene tubing. Again, this is not the correct stuff. This is a Toro blue stripe irrigation fitting or tubing, but they do have polyethylene adapters, which would go from standard PEX to a polyethylene tubing. And you can see they have a copper and a kind of a bronze crimp ring in there. And so that just allows for the transition between PEX and polyethylene tubing. Now, if you don't have a lot of plumbing to do, if you're doing an emergency repair or just a small addition or something like that, and you don't want to invest in a lot of tools, there is kind of what everybody calls a shark bite system. This is Tech-Tite, which is made by Apollo. A couple of these fittings are made by Mueller. It's basically a push-together system. Again, you know, we've got male and female adapters, so it's easy enough to thread onto galvanized pipe, to thread onto any type of male or female adapter in another pipe system. The cool thing about this particular system here is that it's got an O-ring inside and then a bunch of little stainless steel teeth that grip the pipe. The outer dimension of PEX tubing, copper tubing, and Cpvc is the same, or close enough that these fittings will run any one of these pieces of pipe. So I can stick PEX in one side and copper in the other, and I can have a fitting like that. I can put Cpvc in there and also have that fitting connected like that. These are great, in my opinion, for quick repairs. Also good for temporarily roughing in a water heater at a different location. I did that when we were pouring concrete in a person's garage replacing the slab. We had to pull the water heater out, temporarily pipe it in. We used these. It was quick, it was easy, and there's also a disassembly tool here. So when you actually get this put together and it's on there, it really grips well. So you take this little disassembly tool, you slide it over the fitting, and basically you just pull and you can slide it apart. Now a little anti-crimp piece came out with the pipe, but that's fine. I can just drop that back in. We're good to go. So that is a really, really cool thing. This is a brass coupling. This is a copper coupling, and this is a PVC coupling. So these, all three, do the same exact thing, same styles of pipe. It's good to go. If for some reason I need to take Schedule 40 PVC, I can get this adapter here, which is a little unique. You have to push it onto the end of your Schedule 40 PVC, just like a regular shark bite style fitting. And I can take any one of these types of fittings here, and I'll slide this over the end of this leg, and then I can transition to any one of these three types of pipe. So that's a really cool little transition fitting. And like I said, you know, we get our little fitting tool, and I can pull it apart, and I can reuse these fittings if I need to. So the PVC is a little bit bigger, so I'll probably have to get a pair of channel locks or something to push down on that ring to pull it apart. But that is a way to attach Schedule 40 PVC to Cpvc, PEX, or copper. This, kind of like our last PEX, actual barbed PEX adapter, which went from PEX to polyethylene tubing. This is the same thing. You'll notice one side's gray, one side's black. This will attach any one of these three styles of pipe to polyethylene tubing the same way. So really nice system, pretty expensive, but if you're doing a leak repair really quick, you know, you get in there with just a hacksaw, clean the ends of the tubing up, and you just snap it together. You get yourself a piece of flexible PEX so you can snap it in one side and the other, and you can make a repair really fast, really easily, and, you know, have it hold together for a long time. Another type of system that you might be familiar with, more so if you live out on a farm or out in the country where you have a well, is going to be the black polyethylene tubing. Often this will be, you know, 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch for your well to your house, and you'll have big fittings like these that transition from the poly tubing, where it slips over these barbed fittings, to an iron pipe thread. These are basically the same fitting. This one just goes down on your pump, down inside a well, and you put a rope around this little hoop there. That way you can make sure you don't never lose your pump down the well. So there's that style there. You can use kind of, this is basically like an Oetiker style fitting, which they use it a lot on like fuel lines and vehicles and stuff, but it's an eared fitting, and you just basically slide this over what would be the correct size polyethylene tubing over the barbed fittings, and then you crimp it down, and that secures your fitting. They make Oetiker fittings in smaller sizes. Some are 2-ear, some are 1-ear, and this is a 2-ear fitting. So that would be something that you would use for, say, a smaller adapter like this. This is just a barbed fitting. You know, you'd stick it inside your polyethylene tubing and put your crimp over the top of it and crimp it. If you don't have an Oetiker style crimp or clamp, you could use, you know, 1 or 2 hose clamps, whatever makes you feel happy, you know, and crimp it down that way and lock it on there. This is just a simple barbed fitting with a 1/2 inch pipe thread on the other end. And like I said, if you can go to the NPT male or female fittings, threaded fittings, you're pretty much golden. So this is a steel version of a Schedule 80 PVC version. These can be somewhat challenging to get into your tubing sometimes. So here is a new version. These are basically screw in, hand screw in. They have ears on them, so you can just spin them in by hand. They're threaded, and then they have some standard barbs up at the top. Again, male and female 1/2 inch NPT fittings, and you would stick this into your tubing, and you just spin it in, and it gets itself threaded into the tubing right there for you. You don't have to fight it. And then you could use hose clamps or an ear clamp, something like that, of the correct size to clamp it all together. So probably the most common thing that you're going to run into nowadays is going from copper or galvanized to PEX tubing. The easiest way of doing that would be a solder fitting with your PEX, or a female adapter to PEX, and that would be your easiest way. Granted, you're going to need crescent wrenches, pipe wrenches, something like that, Teflon tape, Teflon paste, and with this you're going to need to be able to solder. So this is the cleanest, the fewest connections or joints, the least likely to leak. Not the easiest for somebody that is not necessarily a plumber. For this particular connection here, I would say go with a shark bite fitting. Again, you're going to need Teflon tape, probably a crescent wrench or something like that. And you just thread it on your galvanized pipe, and you just push connect your PEX fitting or tubing into the fitting. For our copper, again, since our PEX and our copper is the same diameter, we just get a coupling and we just slap it together just like that. Our connections are done. Super easy, super quick. All right, thanks again for joining us on another plumbing skills video adapting from one type of pipe to another. These are the most common types of pipe that you'll probably run into in residential and light commercial buildings. It's not all inclusive by any means. You can go online and find suppliers that have literally thousands of different fittings and probably 50 different pipe systems out there, but this is the most common. We do have an Amazon affiliate link, so I'll leave some links down below of types of pipe or tools. We make a small percentage of that sale price, but it doesn't add anything to your cost, so that really helps us out quite a bit. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share. Those help out other people, and also give me ideas for future videos if there's any questions out there. So you can follow us on Instagram at DanCeramaker. So until next time, have a great one. Bye.